I lived with friends, I lived with my partner, and it got to a place where I needed to move home financially. I tried to crunch the numbers about 11 times. It wasn't making sense. And I knew I needed to go home. Blessed, my parents welcomed me back in. And for a long time, I felt uncomfortable telling people, like if we were meeting up, like, oh, where are you now? I'm like, oh, I'm back, in the city, where my parents are. I felt very uncomfortable, even if my parents were talking to their friends, like, oh, how are your children doing? Yeah, Kiersten's at home, things like that. But I think we have to accept that we are seeing times that we have never seen before.
You are now listening to the Moments of Motivation podcast. For more, please visit cashimawo.com. On today's episode, we're joined by Kiersten Brydie of Wellness with Kiersten. Kiersten is a wellness, beauty, and lifestyle influencer in Atlanta. She's also a poet, a yoga teacher, and a Pilates instructor, and she shares her journey with us on navigating living at home, on getting out of the corporate cycle, and how she grew her TikTok to close to 30,000 followers over the last 6 months. I hope that this interview brings you insight on what it means to be a Black woman in the wellness space and what it looks like to make wellness accessible to all shapes and body types. All right, with that being said, let's dive into our show for today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Moments of Motivation. I'm super pumped because we have an amazing guest with us, Kiersten Brydie. So I'm just going to share what I know about her. She and I go way back. We went to KSU together. So I'm going to read her bio, but of course I have to say just a few words. I told her right before we hopped on that I just love what she shares and what she curates on IG and TikTok. Everything that she does is so like visually satisfying, but it's also helpful for you, like with your self-care journey and just in your life. She is a writer, she's a yogi, she's a Pilates instructor, like all the things. And I'm so glad that she's joining us today. So let me jump into her bio. So Kiersten Brydie is a writer, fitness instructor, and wellness content creator based in Atlanta, Georgia. She earned her 200-hour yoga certification from Core Power Yoga in 2021 and her mat Pilates certification from Power Pilates in 2023. Guided by the motto, living well inside and out, Kiersten is passionate about encouraging women of color to view wellness as a standard and not a luxury. She uses her knowledge to build online communities of women who share resources around mindfulness, movement, food, and everything in between. Kiersten is the author of Shedding to Grow, a coming-of-age collection of poems and short stories. On the outside cover of her book, she leaves a note she hopes to continually live by. This is the good I bring into the world and it into me. And adding one thing, she has over 26,000 followers on TikTok. So let's take a moment to give a warm welcome to Kiersten.
Thank you so much. I'm like I told you right before we hopped on, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so inspired by you. So happy to be in this space, girl.
Yay, welcome. So I kind of wanted to start off by sharing some of your poetry because like I actually have a copy of your Shedding to Grow book, and I just like kind of pulled a few of my favorite poems. So I wanted
Mhm.
to share a few that really spoke to me.
Oh, I love that.
Yes. Okay, so one that I really loved is Captain. You are not this body. You are not all the things you didn't do or couldn't be. You are not pain. You are not depression. You are not an undying masterpiece, crafted, created, deep with intricacies that not everyone can water. You are so much more than this body, than these stereotypes, than this existence. You are not this body. You are not some bodies. You are all the things, the experiences, the life you have lived. Art. You are the painter. And if you do not like to paint, become the sculptor. Become everything, become whatever you want. Whoever you need, you are all you wish to be. You are captain.
Ah, wow. It's so weird to hear someone else read my poetry, especially because like I wrote it so long ago, even before it came out, I was compiling all of these poems. So to hear that back, it's like takes me back to the moment I was in when I wrote that.
Oh, I love that. Tell us about that moment that you were in.
Yeah. Yeah. So the book came out in 2019
Mhm.
and I wrote it twice before I actually released it. I wrote it once through and it was so heavy just because I was compiling. I felt like I had to tell everything that I've went through in my life up until that moment, 20 something years of experience. And I would kept reading it through. It was so heavy. And so I wanted to break it up into chapters of shedding and growing and becoming. And
Mhm.
so a lot of those moments are really when I was learning to love myself truly and learning
Mhm.
what that looked like outside of appreciating who my parents tell me that I am or who, my family thinks that I am, like really trying to
Mhm.
figure out what that looks like for me. So that piece
Mhm.
is one of those like let go of what everyone else says and believe it for yourself, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I love that so much. It's so beautiful. And I feel like it's so like in the wellness space, I feel like it's just such a good like word, because I feel like we work so hard like on our bodies, in this wellness space, but it's like we're so much more than our bodies, we're so much more than just this temple that we present to the world. I saw a quote that was like, the most boring thing about us is what we look like. You
Mm, I like that.
And so, I mean, I can't take credit for it, but I just felt like your poem, like, just really exemplified that and just how we shouldn't be so associated with our bodies, with what we've done, and just being in this present moment. So snaps,
Thank
snaps
you.
to that. So you started writing when you were in seventh grade. Can you talk a little bit about that journey?
I did, yes. So growing up in the South, I am a little scrawny, dark-skinned girl in suburban Stone Mountain. And so
Hey, Stone Mountain.
yeah, that's where I grew up. I like to say I kind of lived two lives. So I went to school outside of my neighborhood. I was primarily in very mixed demographic schools. And
Mhm.
then I grew up doing ballet. So I was primarily at white studios. So I kind of had this duality
Mhm.
that I was trying to figure out where do I fit? Like, really, who am I? My
Mhm.
parents are very pro Black. So having those
Mhm.
two experiences were interesting.
Mhm.
And when I was in seventh grade, I was being bullied. I was just like experiencing a lot from boys that I thought I liked or friends who I thought were my friends at the time.
Mhm.
And I would come home and my parents, I would tell them everything about things that were going on in my life. And they
Mhm.
got me a little black composition notebook and they were like, put whatever you want in there. And
Mhm.
so I started kind of writing about, kind of more so journaling about things that I
Mhm.
was going on. And
Mhm.
then I realized they were turning into poems. And I would
Mhm.
just keep that book close to me. I never shared anything publicly until
Mhm.
I was in college from seventh grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you kind of had like a coming out in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Wow. And you seem to be so close to your parents. Like it seems like those are like your ride or dies.
They my people. They my people.
I love that. Your parents seem cool. Like the fact that they're like, here's this notebook, like write about it and like it birthed into something, you becoming like a poet,
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. What's funny is they don't remember giving that to me, but you have those like core memories that really stand out to you and make a
Hmm.
difference. But they're
Hmm.
like, oh, that's so nice. But we don't really recall.
Like, oh, we did that. Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Like, you changed my life, mom, but okay.
Okay. I love that. I love that. Well, talk to us a little bit about like your wellness journey and kind of how that coincides with your writing, because I feel like I'm sure it does, but it may not be like known to the world?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so I started dancing when I was 3 years old.
Mm,
So I was involved in ballet primarily. I was competing at a very young age. So that's where my introduction to movement really came from. But
mm,
really, that's where I first learned how to express myself. Kind of as you can, I guess, get to know, I
yeah.
kept a lot of things to myself.
Hmm.
So the book that I had, dancing was a way to express myself. And in college was when I really started to fuse dance and poetry into caring about young Black girls.
Hmm.
So a lot of the things I write about are catered towards what I wish I had at the time. A lot of the things I do now in the wellness space with teaching, I want to make my classes accessible. I want to make everything I share online accessible.
Hmm.
So in a lot of ways, they're fused, but I always say everything I do for Black girls.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it definitely shows, like, even like reading through your poems, it's like you can see, like, I think one of them was called like What Will I Tell My Black Daughter?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That was another really good piece. And it's just like, it's just such a unique perspective that we have as Black women. So I love that. It's almost like you're going back to lift younger you up,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
several younger yous up.
that's the goal, definitely.
I feel like you're like soft life queen. Like you are like such a beautiful embodiment of soft life where it's like, not too soft where it's like you just laying on the couch, but it's like a productive, like life is like, growing and flowing. So like what does self-care look like and feel like for you?
Ooh, yeah, I love self-care.
Hmm.
Um,
I know
I
you
love
do.
taking time. Like for me, I think time, actually starting there, is a big element of how I care for myself.
Mm,
I'm, work a very high stress 9 to 5 job. I'm
mm,
also creating content. I'm also teaching. So one
mm,
of the biggest ways I pour into myself first is like my morning routine.
mm,
I have to get up. I have to have at least an hour to move
mm,
my body, take my time, journal, get some fresh sun, things like that. And then I think being in community with people who are on similar journeys is
mhm,
also a big way. Like the students that I get to meet through my classes, my friends who I've known who moved into
mhm.
wellness spaces as well, is a big way that I like pour back into what I need.
I love that. You said something that is like a buzzword in the best way for me, and that's morning routine. Like, talk to us a little bit more about your morning routine. Like, what time do you wake up, and like, what things are you doing every single morning?
Yeah, yeah. So I have a lot of luxury or privilege to kind of ease out of bed. I work from home. I can
Hmm.
kind of set my schedule for when my first calls are.
Hmm.
So typically I like to wake up, I'd say 6:30 is like ideal.
Hmm.
I typically like to do my workouts in the morning because if I
Hmm.
get to the end of the day, it's just not happening. So
I feel you.
yeah, I'll go to like a morning Pilates class. I like to take classes from other teachers, or I'll do like a weighted workout in the gym or at my home. From there, I'll take a shower. I love to go outside within the first 90 minutes, I would say, and be with my dog. So whether that's a quick walk around the neighborhood or just like sitting in the backyard. I read somewhere that being outside within the first 90 minutes of your wake time resets your circadian clock. So it gets you in
Mhm.
line. So ever since I read that, I was like, okay, that's something that I makes me feel energized. I used to have like a really heavy breakfast in the morning as well, just because my work schedule gets crazy. But
Mhm.
now I'm into like shakes or smoothies or lots of like fresh
Mhm.
fruit. I like to add a
Mhm.
lot of color into anything that I'm eating.
Yeah.
So that's something in the morning that I like to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that. And your juices, oh my gosh. I feel like all of your food is like, again, that visually satisfying. It's like your little bowls, you're like your juices. Like, what's some of your favorite juices to juice or to make?
Yeah. Yeah. I love a pineapple, green apple, kale, and ginger mix. I love adding ginger to something that's like really sweet, like a pineapple or an orange.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I like is just an orange juice. So like tons of oranges, lots of ginger, and maybe like a dash of carrots. That's
Mm-hmm.
really good. I like to make things pretty because I feel like it just makes me feel like it makes the experience better if I'm having a juice and I decide to pour it in a clear glass and I'm able to look at it and that brings color into the rest of my day. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of how I like to think of things.
Mm. I love that. I feel like as you're speaking, it's like you put so much care into the things that you do for yourself. It's like you bring the process to life, like not like a ritual, but just like I don't know, it's like it really kind of it's so colorful, like the way you describe it and being like intentional about the process and the care. And it's like even just in that, how you make your juices, how you make your food, it's like that in and of itself feels like self-care just from like how you describe it. So like I love that.
Yeah, it's like things that we all are gonna do each day. We're gonna feed ourselves at some point. We're hopefully going to have, ability to walk. If you have that ability to bathe yourself, like little moments where you can add in just a little zhuzh for you.
Yes, yes, the judge. I want to circle back to like your poetry, like
Mhm,
the birthing of you, like that self-love journey that you went through. Because I always feel like everything in life like builds upon the other,
mhm,
and I feel like this version of you is here because of like the work that you did of self-love for yourself, back in 2017, 2018, 2016. So
mhm,
talk like a little bit about like your process and your journey to self-love within your like poetry years and shoot even today, but
mhm,
talk about like how you've reached to where you're at.
mm. A lot of I'm just about to catch a lot of
Go ahead, be you.
a lot of fuck ups, honestly, a lot of figuring things out. I think from an early age, I was blessed enough to have people love me out loud and tell me beautiful things about myself and my mind and my creativity. But the disconnect for me was always going out into the world and not seeing what they said reflected back to me. Like, oh, my parents think that about me, but clearly the world does not. So that was really the hardest part for me. And I think once I learned a lot about our history as Black people, our strength as Black women, that in itself poured a lot of self love into me. There also, like a lot of us with romantic relationships, there's a lot of things that are broken down depending on who you choose to partner with. So a lot of mistakes there in terms of
Mhm.
past partners that really tore me down. And I think one of the best things was having like my friends, my girls around me lifting me back up. So I don't think there is anything specific that added to that self love,
Mhm.
but a lot of just trial and error, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm,
that's like so good. Like, and I love that you said that because, you know, I'm a dark-skinned Black girl too,
mhm,
and I
mhm,
feel like I never really thought about it in that way of like at home, you're called beautiful, you're called intelligent, you're called smart, but when you go onto the world, that's not the reflection that you're given. And so there's this sort of like disconnect, between like who you're told you are by your family and who you're told you are by the world,
mhm,
and it's like I can imagine, because I think we all have our own self-love journey, so I can
mhm,
imagine there's so many other Black women out there who have that same disconnect, and you don't even realize where it comes from,
mhm,
it's just like, okay, yeah, struggle with confidence, but why? Why is that our, lighter tone counterparts don't struggle with confidence in ways that we do, so
mhm.
I just love how you made that connection.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of times, we obviously don't grow up in the bubble of our families. Like I was in a lot of white spaces that were I was in the ballet world. So that is already a
Yes.
world where you are in front of a mirror, being critiqued about your body, being critiqued about how you move, how you show up, how you stand. So that versus the disconnect of what my family is showing me, I think that so many people experience that on different levels. And really, I think there is a middle ground. And I think that it takes a lot of time to get there to find what that looks like for you. Because even what your family is telling you, that's what they think. So I
Right.
think the real part is, how do you feel about yourself truly? Yeah.
Now, talk about how you feel about the yoga space and the Pilates space, because that's kind of like another primarily dominated by white women. And I had to say this on the last recording, and I'm going to say this here. It's like, this is an open podcast, is an open show. Like, we welcome all types of people, but we can't ignore the obvious differences. So, like, talk about how you navigate through that, or if you've had any encounters through that kind of remind you of your upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
the Pilates yoga spaces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very
You're like, actually.
it's very, I think that yoga itself has been kind of capitalized in a lot of ways. Pilates, we know when Lori Harvey said Pilates, was that a year or two ago, everyone started doing Pilates and making money from it. I think that for Pilates in particular, in Atlanta, there there are very few Black spaces for us to show up. And there are even fewer teachers of color. I'm lucky enough to be a part of a group called Black Girl Pilates that I follow online. Everyone listening should follow online as well, but they share resources for Black teachers. The founder is actually here in Atlanta, so she mentors Black Pilates teachers. But I think it's hard. One of the biggest challenges for me is like our bodies look different. And so cueing on bodies that look different, that move different, that want to hear something different when they're being talked to, even music, and set in that space. Coming out of both of my teacher trainings, I took all the knowledge that I had, I was very grateful for, but I had to figure out, like, how am I going to go into my community, tell someone what they just told me? Because I know my aunties, they're not going to want to hear what I learned in this training. It's not going to resonate. So, like, in my Pilates classes, we're listening to the songs we want to listen to. We're listening to R&B, a lot of neo soul, trap, if we want to get there. You know what I mean? We're having conversations throughout class, which I think is also something that is a cultural difference in what we usually see. We don't have to be as polished and as placed when you come into my class. I want to talk. How does this feel on your body? How did you feel before you came in here? So I know what to look out for, things like that, where that is a difference, I would say, culturally.
I love that. Like, I love how it's so personalized to you, and I love how, like, you took what you learned and really, like, made it your own, and adapted it to fit the culture, and not just kind of like copy and paste, which I feel like any good teacher does. But, like, I especially love the fact that just the care, and just how you said, like, the conversation piece, because that's like one thing about yoga class. It's like, so quiet. You don't want to make a noise. You don't want to say the wrong thing. It's like, it can be so rigid and so tense. So I love that you offer your students the space to be like, did I put my leg in the right place? Like, I feel a little funky here, and like letting them to express themselves, because that's a part of our growth, and that's a part of our reconnection back to ourselves as well. So it's like, I love that.
Yeah. And I feel like you feel safe when you're able to have that conversation, when you're not afraid of, oh, that person's going to think I'm new here, so I don't want to say anything, or I'm already maybe the only Black girl, so I don't want to stand out too much. So I'll just kind of, I might hurt myself, think you might get injured. So it
Yeah.
makes you emotionally and physically safe if you're able to have that kind of personal connection.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you about something you posted on TikTok recently.
Okay.
You posted about living at home in your late 20s, and I absolutely loved it because when I was in my 20s, I was so like hot and bothered to move out my parents' house. Like that's all I wanted to do. I didn't care about anything else. Like I just wanted my space. And looking back, I'm like, wow, how much money could I have saved if I would have stayed? Like how much more successful and like farther along could I be if I would have just swallowed my pride and, stayed at home, saved my money. So like I just want you to talk about that because for people who are listening for who have that opportunity, like talk about that, like the
Yeah.
decision, making the decision to do the change and like now living it, how that looks for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a tough one. I'm not going to lie. I was home during graduate school, and then I lived with friends. I lived with my partner, and it got to a place where I needed to move home financially. I tried to crunch the numbers about 11 times. It wasn't making sense. And I knew I needed to go home. Blessed, my parents welcomed me back in. And for a long time, I felt uncomfortable telling people, like if we were meeting up, like, oh, where are you now? I'm like, oh, I'm back, in the city, where my parents are. I felt very uncomfortable, even if my parents were talking to their friends, like, oh, how are your children doing? Yeah, Kiersten's at home, things like that. But I think we have to accept that we are seeing times that we have never seen before.
Never.
This society, this economy is brutal. And so our parents, 25, 26, 27, whatever, is not the same as our 25, 26, 27.
Okay.
Times are different. And I think I find comfort in knowing like this is going to be a part of my journey that helps to set me up for success later on.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to be at my 9 to 5 job forever.
Mhm.
If I
Mhm.
can get myself on my feet, if I can, fully dive into the wellness space like I want to with comfort, with
Mhm.
care, with,
Yes, soft
with
life.
a roof over my head, I'm going to take that and I'm going to let whoever thinks something else think something else. And
Yes.
from the TikTok video, I've seen that so many other people are in the exact same place. So it's like we're all trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that so much because I was talking to my brother earlier this week just about how we're so forced to fit into society's construct of success. The whole like going to college, getting a degree, and then getting your master's, and then getting married, and then having kids, and doing it all by a certain age and a certain time, and, getting the job and being on your own, buying the house, like all these benchmarks that we're, supposed to hit by a certain time. And if we don't, we fall short. It's
Mhm.
just like such a myth because
Mhm.
who has to live with those decisions at the end of the day? Who has to face the stress of whatever those decisions cost you? At the end
Mhm.
of the day, it's you. So everybody looking from outside in can point a finger and be like, you should do this and you should do that. And why aren't you? And judging when meanwhile they hate where they're at. They're miserable in their life, miserable with the quote unquote, right decision that you should be making for you that just ruined, their personal standing. And so I just love that you're so bold. I know, like you said, it took you a while to kind of be comfortable in it, but I think you sharing your truth in that way is going to give a lot of people the permission to do the same for themselves. And, you know, that impact that you're creating, even just with that one post, it's like I think it's going to have such a ripple effect, because that's affecting people's finances, people's mental health. It's so much more than just, oh, I made this, little post about living
Mhm.
at home. It's like in 5 years, somebody who makes that decision can have, a nice little chunk of change set in
Mhm.
their savings, So I just
Yeah.
I love that so much. And I was like, yeah, I have to ask her about that.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And I feel like COVID really shifted my perspective in terms of like the benchmarks that we're supposed to hit. COVID made me realize like first of all, life is short. Time is a construct. Like a lot of these things that we were dependent on being in place fell through. And now I'm realizing the only thing that's left is to create your life how you want to. And so if I'm 29 living at home, that's going to be it.
Yes, I
Yeah.
love it. I love
Mhm.
it. So I feel like as your following is growing, like more people like admire the work that you're doing. So somebody who's like just jumping into the wellness space, who's like watching your story, like what kind of words would you have for them if they wanted to get where you're going or kind of get themselves in the wellness industry? What would you
Mm.
share with them?
Hmm. Um, I would say don't watch too much.
Mm,
Don't take that the wrong way, but don't watch anyone too much. I think it's really easy to get caught up in like, this person has the exact trajectory that I'm looking for. They're exactly where I want to be. So I'm going to try to align myself and do those same steps. And we don't know what's going on behind the scenes for anyone that we see online. And I'm here to tell you, baby, you don't know what's going on. So watch and learn and see what you can take in. Also, message people, try to have those conversations, but take a lot of time offline to write out, in 5 years, I see myself doing this. One thing I've always wanted to do is this, like fill in those gaps in your journaling prompt rather than trying to fill them in with what you've seen other people do. And take your time and be easy on yourself and do it all. That's another thing I would say. Don't try to do one thing and stick to it. If you're still trying to explore, do a lot of things. Try everything out, see what you enjoy, see what sticks, and then kind of move from there.
I love that you said that because that was actually one of my questions was like, how do you navigate the comparison syndrome, and imposter syndrome in this space? Like, how do you navigate seeing people and not getting caught up in that comparison mindset?
That is the hardest thing for me. And I'd say about a year ago now, I took almost a year away from social media.
Mm-hmm.
I was still creating a little bit on TikTok for fun, but I wasn't on Instagram. And I started a new Instagram page to kind of release the people who I was admiring a bit too much. So I think that when you're on your phone too much, I think that you can kind of feel your heart skip up a little bit, or maybe you start to sweat a little bit when you see someone's page in particular. You start to go down a rabbit hole. So really kind of check in with yourself. And if you need to go through a mass unfollow, or if you need to start anew, don't be afraid to do that either. But that's really hard. That's something that I still constantly struggle with, is looking at people and respecting where they are and not putting what they have gone through onto myself.
Yeah, I love that. And I remember that when like you stopped your old Instagram and then like came back with your fresh one. And I really admired that too, because I feel like it takes a lot to not go for the vanity metrics, of like the numbers and the following and stuff, and just being like, you know what, I'm going to start over, and like whoever comes are the people who are going to come,
Yeah.
and like
Mhm.
I feel like reinventing that, like everything just seems so fresh and so new for you. And it's just like, I love to see it. And I admire the boldness, that inspired action that you seem like you consistently take. I know on outside looking in is always one thing, but I love that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that time away was needed. I'd say I lived so much during that time away. For one,
Mhm.
just time, literally. I wasn't on my phone. I wasn't picking up my phone, but I
Mhm.
got to experience a lot. It was absolutely what I needed with where I was at that time. And I'm happy now that the people who followed along are actually the people that I want to keep building community with.
Mhm. Another question I wanted to ask you was about your creation process. So like I feel like again, it's just like your videos. They're so good. And I feel like you capture the important moments, but I imagine that you're also really mindful and present when you're in a space. So like, how do you find that balance of like getting the content, but then also like experiencing the moment?
Yeah. So this is going to get more into logistics a little bit, but I like to content batch
Mm,
um, because I don't want to go, especially for TikTok. Typically, I'm posting on TikTok at least once a day.
mhm,
Um, it's such a quick platform where you can move in that way. But I don't want to think every morning, what kind of video am I going to have to post
mhm,
today? I need to make sure that I do this so that I can post.
mhm,
So typically on the weekends, I'm creating about 3 to 5 videos, short
mhm,
videos. I'm doing a yoga flow, I'm doing a talking video. The things that take the most time are going into day in the lives, which I
mhm,
love to film.
mhm,
And I'll do those when I can. But like you said, I'll pick up the camera, I'll film a quick moment of maybe a fun event that I'm at, and then I put my phone away because I want to experience the event that I'm at.
mhm,
So very quick moments, and then making it feel like making my audience feel like I'm there with them rather than,
mhm,
hey guys, look what I'm doing. Isn't this cool? Like I like to take that approach of, hey, I want y'all to come with me, look
mhm,
at this experience. Um, but it's not something that I hope people kind of take in vain in a way.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't think so. I think that like it definitely translates, There's a lot of care, and that's why I asked about the balance, because there's so much care put into the content that you make. So it's like, dang, is she always on her phone? But she don't seem like she's always on her phone, So like where's that balance? And it definitely does not feel like, look at my,
Mhm.
extravagant life or luxurious life. It's like, no, this is just what health and wellness looks like to me and for me in this season. So it,
Mhm.
it definitely
Mhm.
translates.
Good, good. Glad to hear that.
Yeah. So there are three final questions that I like to ask everybody at the end of the interview. And so the first one is, what is bringing you joy in this season?
Ooh, what is bringing me joy in this season? Um, a lot of it is my puppy,
Oh,
who I love very much. I have well, he'll be 2 actually this week. So I love being outside and being able to like run around with him or play fetch and just experience the weather before it transitions into fall. Little moments like that I'm really enjoying. And then another thing that's bringing me joy is just I feel like all of my relationships in my life are in a really great place. They've had a lot of work put into them, my
oh.
romantic relationships, my family, my friends. And so I'm seeing us all settle into just amazing, comfortable, fulfilling relationships right now.
Hmm. That's such a blessing. I feel like when we do goals, it's easy to just talk about like your career success and not necessarily talk about your relationship success. So I love like again the care that's put into even just your circle, your friends, your loved ones, your partner.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's a really important piece of wellness that we miss. I was listening to a podcast and it was talking about how I can't remember the exact like statistic, but they did a study and they were showing that the most important factor, like even more important than what we eat, is our community and how like
Mm,
who we're associated by. Because like back in our like hunter gatherer days, if you were isolated, you were gone,
mm,
that was it. Like
mhm.
you didn't even stand a chance because anybody could come after you. But if you have that pack, it's like you're more likely to live longer, and that still translates into today,
Yeah,
so it's so
that
easy.
makes sense.
Mhm. Like especially when we get caught up in Instagram and just our cell phones and like work and just kind of like being here, it's like we forget that with the people that we love and like out here is really where the magic happens. It's why we even do this down here in the work, so that our in person and our connections can be more fulfilling. So
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
love that,
yeah.
that's
No,
something to enjoy.
yeah, yeah. I love that too. I'm gonna take that with me for sure.
Yeah, yay. Okay, so the second question is, what are you celebrating in this season?
Hmm. I think I'm mostly celebrating my TikTok community. In
Yeah.
the last like 2 months, we have grown so much. Like I said, I've been on there for over a year or two now.
Mhm.
And what makes me the most happy is that the things that are blowing up is when I'm finally the most vulnerable. And
Yeah.
finally, it's not me trying to follow a trend or not me trying to appear or look a certain way. The video that really popped off was me being like, hey y'all, I need to change my life. Something gotta give. And so many people related to it. So just to see the community grow and to be able to have new opportunities that are coming from social media and content creation is just like, I really can't fathom what's going on right now.
It makes me so happy, and like I know that the day is coming where you'll be able to leave your 9 to 5 and just like, this is it. I'm doing it. Like I'm so excited. I can't wait for the day. Like I'm excited for it for you because it's coming. It's really just a matter of time. So it's definitely so cool to just, to see the impact. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Thank you. Yes. In Jesus' name, I know it's on its way in due time.
Yes. Amen. Amen.
Yes.
And the final thing is, what are you birthing into being in this season?
Ooh, yes. What am I birthing into being? Um, I would say continued alignment. Um,
Mm,
I want to have moments nearly every day where I feel like what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing.
mm.
And I feel that through the people I get to connect with, through the opportunities that I have, through how I spend my time. So I want more moments where I'm walking in exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Yes, yes, I love that. I love that. Um, One affirmation that I've like really been working with in this season is I am the vibration of the answered prayer. And
Mm,
just like whatever
mm,
we pray for, just being able to rise into that level. And I feel like just you saying like you want more moments of being in alignment, kind of that just popped into my mind of just whatever God has for us, being able to rise into that, being able to grow into that person, whatever
yeah,
in the moment, whenever the moment calls for it. So
yeah, yeah.
I love that so much.
You can believe I'm journaling about that this week. I will take that affirmation with me. I love that. That's exactly where I
Yay.
want to be.
Yes, I love it.
Mhm.
So where can people find you? People who want to like tap into your flavor of wellness, where can they find you?
Yes. So I am on both Instagram and TikTok at Well with Kiersten. Kiersten is spelled Kiersten. And then my book, Shedding to Grow, is available on Amazon. I have both print and ebook copies. So feel free to check that out. And if you're in Atlanta and interested in a Pilates or yoga class, feel free to email me. My email is in the bios for all of my socials.
Yay. Thank you so much, Kiersten, for coming, for sharing your story, your experience, your everything, your energy with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. I hope that Kiersten's story helped to make you realize that your goals and your aspirations are a lot closer than you think. And sometimes it's in the vulnerability where you can find your deepest transformations and the deepest rewards from sharing the things that you may not be the most proud of. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review. Share this episode on your social media by taking a screenshot and by tagging us. You can find me on Instagram as @KashiMawo and as @momentsofmotivation_, and on Facebook as Kashi Thompson. If there are specific motivation topics that you'd like to see on the show, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to catching you again on the next one. Take care.